Don't just live for tomorrow, or just live in yesterday. Just be glad for all you have that's in today.
Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to my blind reaction to Steven Universe Season 5, Episode 26. So just going to say right off the bat, I have been told that the file that I got for this, for one reason or another, does not show the title screen. It starts like right after that. So I did look up the title like right before starting this, and right before starting this recording, you know. And apparently, it's called Together Alone. Now, one of my favorite episodes of the entire series is called Alone Together. Alone Together was early on, and it was the first appearance of Stevonnie. It was the episode where, you know, that entire concept where with Steven being able to fuse was brought up. Steven and Connie fused, and Stevonnie became, like, a thing. And it's one of my favorite episodes because of, well, the great writing in it, the amazing depth that they just give to this idea of Stevonnie right away, as well as just the fact that it is the first episode for my favorite character in the series, let's be honest. Stevonnie is my favorite character in the entire series, so I do have a little bit of a bias there, I'll admit. Now, I don't know what this episode's going to entail, though. I know nothing about spoilers regarding that. I do have no real idea, actually. I was going to say I do have an idea, but it's like, again, with what the title is, I would assume Stevonnie's going to be in it, but how is that going to work? Because last we left off, Steven had decided to throw a ball in the same way that Pink Diamond used to. So he's going to throw a ball, invite everyone to it. How does that go into Stevonnie? Like, I assume that Connie is there, so Stevonnie is a possibility, but how's that going to happen? Why are they going to fuse? And what relevance is that going to be? Because the thing is, this is a reversal of the title of Stevonnie's first appearance. In my eyes, that means it has to be a big deal. That means it would have to be a big deal for Stevonnie as a character. What are they going to do with them? Like, how is this going to be such a huge deal? I mean, I'm not saying that it won't be. I'm not saying that there's no way they could make it work. I have no idea where this is going to go. Now, Steven did mention wanting to find out what happened with Pink's subject, so maybe there's something involving that. But even so, I don't know if this is going to be such a big deal to where the episode is basically the reverse of the name of Stevonnie's first appearance episode. What is that going to mean? That's what's really, like, confusing me here. And this is just a normal length episode, and a normal 11-minute episode. So, I mean, if it was double length, that'd be one thing, but I just don't know. Now, this is still part of the Diamond Days series of episodes that are going to end off the season. So, I assume it's going to have some relevance to everything else going on as well. Everything with the diamonds, and especially White. I just don't, for the life of me, know what. Because, see, when I finished the last episode, my initial thoughts were that the ball is where it's going to be going. That Steven's going to start getting ready and preparing for that, and start sending out invitations, I guess. But yeah, I have no clue. I have absolutely no clue. I've heard people like this episode, though. I have heard that. I don't know any details about what happens in it. I haven't seen any screenshots, luckily, but I do know people like it. I guess there's no other choice but to just find out. So when the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black and then fades back in, everything... Oh, excuse me. That came out of nowhere. Everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episode. So that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we will begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So, Steven Universe episodes, for the most part, not counting double length, are 11 minutes long. And a lot of them feel like they go by pretty quick, because, 11 minutes long. They do go by pretty quick. But this episode really felt like it went by quick. Not necessarily for the best reasons. Let me explain. See, when you usually say an episode goes by quick, it's usually because of the old adage that time flies when you're having fun. That you're enjoying the episode so much that it's over before you know it. However, that's not the only instance in which an episode can go by quick. There's also the instance of where the episode just feels like it's rushed. Like, it's just like, it's rushing through so much that it doesn't give you a chance to really even understand what's going on. And that's kind of what this episode felt like to me. I'm not saying it was necessarily altogether bad, but it was extremely rushed. This ball should have been at least during the course of 2 episodes. The fact that it was only in 1 really just makes it feel like it was irrelevant. And maybe in the long run it is, but it just felt like it was building it up to be a bigger deal. I mean, granted, it didn't have like episodes and episodes of build up or anything. Like, let's say the Equestria games in MLP, which was completely ruined. But it was given at least some level of build up. And I've always talked about how anything that has build up has to pay off. And this didn't feel like proper payoff. It felt like it was just like skipped through, basically. I mean, if you wanted to put it some way, it's like, it feels like the entire ball was fast forwarded through. Like, when you're fast forwarding through a show or whatnot, for whatever reason, and you get like a small idea of what's going on, but you miss a lot. You miss out on a lot because you're just fast forwarding through it. That's what it felt like here. It felt like I got a vague idea for everything. And it's like, I know what happened in the episode. But it's like, it just felt like there was so much more that needed to be done, so much more that could have been done. So in the episode, Steven hosts his ball as Pink Diamond, and apparently he's not really allowed to do much. In preparing for the ball, we find out that basically all the balls are the same, and you're not actually really allowed to do much of anything at them. It's all very robotic and static, and yeah, it's just kind of meh. And that's where my first problem lies with this episode. The preparation for the ball should have been almost an entire episode in and of itself. But instead, it was like maybe a couple minutes. It wasn't, I don't even think it was half of this episode. Let me actually, I actually want to kind of check that real quick. I want to see where the preparations for the ball ended. Okay, it was about half the episode. Half the episode was the preparation, half was the actual ball. Which actually makes things worse, but I'll get to that in a moment when I talk about the ball itself. Either way, the preparation should have lasted almost this entire episode, like 3/4 instead of half. In fact, I think, honestly, this entire episode should have just been the preparation. While the actual ball started at the very end, and maybe it ended with White Pearl announcing that White Diamond wasn't going to be there, and of course that would put Steven's plans in danger, and that's where it would pick up next episode. And then next episode would be the ball until the very end, where Stevonnie would be thrown into Pink Diamond's room. That's how it should have been. That would have been the perfect amount of timing and pacing for this kind of plot. But instead, having half of an 11-minute episode be the prep and the other half be the entirety of this ball, it felt so rushed and skimmed through. And I'll be honest, I've talked about in the past how the Crewniverse have made some questionable decisions in the more recent seasons. And I'm not saying that I don't like the show anymore. Not by any means. I love this show. And there's a lot to love with it still. But it just feels like they're making some really, really bad decisions here. From the entire thing with Pink Diamond being Rose and all, to just this now especially. And I think what makes it even worse is the fact that Stevonnie was pretty much pointless here. Stevonnie's only inclusion here was to basically put a halt to the ball and be on screen for like less than a minute. It's like, oh, Stevonnie's just there. And then they're thrown into Pink Diamond's room. And the ball's over. And it's like, okay. When the episode is titled, again, like I said in the pre-thoughts, as a reverse of the episode where Stevonnie first appears, you think it's going to be important, and you think Stevonnie's going to have a bigger presence and a bigger role. But no, they're kind of just used as a plot device to end the ball way before it should have been ended, pacing-wise. And it feels really bad because of it. And then, on top of it, it's like, it feels like it's completely setting up for something, of course, with White Pearl's reaction towards the fusion and everything. And then Yellow and Blue putting a stop to everything. And it kind of comes across to me as they're trying to do way too much in too short of a time. I feel like the possibility here is that they're trying to make Blue and Yellow out to not actually be good guys. That they're actually just like, okay, we're happy to have Pink back. They're not actually reformed or anything. They're just happy to have Pink back. And they're just trying to bring everything back to how it used to be. They don't care about anything else. In which case, again, it just felt too rushed to bring that in just in, like, the last minute of an episode. And if they're trying to do the idea that maybe they're just trying to protect Steven from the wrath of White Diamond or something, I mean, again, it's just like, it feels like it was just kind of thrown in there. The pacing just ruins this episode for me. Again, it's not a terrible episode or anything. It's not that I outright hate this episode. But at the same time, I just don't feel like it amounted to anything. I just don't feel like this episode actually amounted to anything. I don't feel like there was a purpose to it. It was extremely rushed and felt like this entire ball was just kind of waved under the rug. It felt like Stevonnie was just waved under the rug. Two things that in this episode should not have been waved under the rug. Stevonnie, because of the episode title, setting up expectations. And then the ball because, you know, the build-up to it that we had last episode. And then when you just try to throw in all this other stuff with the possibility that Yellow and Blue either aren't actually reformed and good guys, or the idea that that they're just trying to protect Steven from the wrath of White Diamond. Either way, it just doesn't work. I am really disappointed by this. Because again, I had very high hopes for this episode. Maybe it was my fault. Maybe I was just hyping myself up too much because of finding out what the title was. And after last episode was not really like anything amazing, but it definitely had some good build-up. And I thought that this ball was going to be this big deal, but no, it was completely wasted. I have no idea where this is going to go now. Because at this point, even if I tried to guess, I'd probably end up being wrong. Just because of how they're clearly, or well, not clearly, taking this. This arc is doing some really weird things in my eyes. And I'm just not sure what they're trying to go for with it, especially with this episode. Now, I won't say that Stevonnie's presence there was, like, at all meaningless to the episode. Because, I mean, it did stop the ball. It did make White Pearl have that reaction. It did basically make Yellow and Blue go out of their way to poof both Garnet and Opal. As well as that other fusion, I guess, which was a thing. And it's just like, what's even happening at this point? I think was Amethyst poofed? I don't actually remember. Because again, it just went by so quick. It's like I didn't have time to process anything. But it's like, I'm just really disappointed. Even despite all of that, which I mentioned, Stevonnie, again, was basically used as a plot device. Rather than an actual character. Rather than actually something to be interested in this episode. And it's just like, I feel so upset by this. Because again, as I mentioned before, Stevonnie is my favorite character of the show. And with that tiny bit of the preview I did end up seeing, it looks like they're going to unfuse, probably right away, making Stevonnie's presence even less of even a deal. Not even just a big deal, just even less of a deal at all. At this point, I just feel like, pun intended, they dropped the ball. The crew dropped the ball with this episode. With the concept of it. Why would you name it that? Why would you name this episode as a reverse of the first episode with Stevonnie in it if you're going to just relegate Stevonnie to a fucking plot device? A title like that is clearly going to make people think that Stevonnie's going to be a big deal here. That Stevonnie's going to have actually something to do. That Stevonnie's going to be relevant. But nope. Silly me. Alone Together, again, one of my favorite episodes of this show. Of the entire show. And Together Alone, I wouldn't say it's one of my least favorite, but one of the most disappointing at least. It's so excessively rushed, it's not funny. It's so poorly handled, it's not funny. It mishandles its plot, it mishandles things it built up, it mishandles Stevonnie, the title is a lie. Because let's talk about this. So, Alone Together, the episode where Steven and Connie first fuse into Stevonnie, the title meant something. Because in the episode, even though they were together as Stevonnie, they still felt alone. They were together, but they felt alone because it just... It was a... They felt like it was something that they weren't used to, and they weren't comfortable with quite yet. Because they became one person, one being, they weren't ready for that kind of thing yet. So they were alone, but they were still together. And in the end, they had to realize that they were together, that they'll never be alone, because they'll always be there for each other, for themselves. Reversing the title to Together Alone, I mean, that alone doesn't, like, make that big of a difference in the way that the title would be perceived. It would still basically mean the same thing. But it could also mean the opposite of it. See, Alone Together, they're alone. Stevonnie is alone, but they'll always be together. While Together Alone, they're together, but they'll always be alone. And it's just like, it really doesn't translate into this episode at all. It doesn't work. Because again, it implies that something big is going to happen with Stevonnie. That Stevonnie's going to be a big part of it. And instead, I'm not just going to keep repeating myself over and over. At this point, I'm just really upset by this. Again, this episode isn't like outright terrible or anything. And I wouldn't say it's one of my least favorite necessarily. But it's definitely one of my most disappointing episodes. It's one of those episodes that could have and should have been so much more. I guess tell me what you thought in the comments below. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Connie and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.
And though you've come through many obstacles, shed tears along the way, you're still standing, live, love, laugh.